This show was sponsored in part by the Mental Health Association in Hennepin County.
Hello and welcome. According to a recent study, coronary artery disease is predicted by male pattern baldness. This got me to thinking, and I decided let's do a show on male pattern baldness, learn more about the causes, more about the treatment, and find out if this is in fact the case. With me tonight to talk about these things, first of all, is Dr. O.J. Rustad, who is a dermatologist here in the Twin City area. You have several clinics in several settings around the Twin Cities.
That's correct.
And our second guest is a very brave man who's here to talk about his own balding situation. His name is Anders Torda. Welcome.
Thank you.
Well, is this study something that we need to be very, very concerned about, O.J.?
Well, this is just one study that was recently published in the Journal of the American Medical Association that seemed to suggest some linkage between balding and heart attack, but it's just one study, and further information will be necessary to see if this indeed is the case.
If 30 million American men are dealing with balding, which is what I've read, it's really important to keep up with this, but you're saying we really need more
information, right?
I read that we lose about between 50 and 100 hairs a day just normally.
That's correct.
Sounds like a lot of loss. Is that true?
Well, it may seem like a lot of loss, but you have 100 to 150,000 hairs on your scalp. So just losing 100 is only around 10%. And so you have about 90% of your scalp that's actually growing. So, and it occurs in a diffuse pattern, so you don't have any one area that stands out as far as an area of hair loss.
So what's abnormal hair loss? If it's okay to lose up to 100, what kind of numbers are there when it's abnormal?
Well, what I generally do when I'm evaluating a person for hair loss is to go through and lightly pull hair from their scalp. And if I get more than 6 hairs in a fingerful, then that's abnormal hair loss. You should get anywhere from 0 to maybe 2 or 3 at one time.
With you, Anders, now you look like you have quite thick hair, but how early did you start noticing there was some receding and some, as you say, loss as you tugged at it?
About 2.5, 3 years ago.
Okay, and you told me you were
back
30,
here,
right?
Yeah, I'm 30.
Is it something that's been a real concern for you? Have you worried about it?
Well, it's not going to the movies and the back row is looking on my bald spot back here. It's no fun. I don't feel comfortable.
There's so much emphasis in our society on hair. I guess there always has been, but there sure is a lot of emphasis on hair, which then makes for more pressure when you're losing it.
One point I guess I'd like to make about losing, when I pull and get 6 hairs at a time, Anders has a type of hair loss that is a gradual hair loss. And when I'm talking pulling out 6 hairs at a time, that's a different situation where there's an actual scalp disease that may be occurring. So Anders would probably never been able to pull hair from his scalp.
You want to try?
And get more than 6 at one time. So he would probably get 1 or 2. It's when you have the type of hair loss he has, it's the type that gradually the hairs don't grow for as long a period of time, and they gradually get thinner and thinner and eventually don't grow. So you don't notice a significant number of hairs coming out. It's just that they don't grow back like you'd like them to.
Okay. I've always heard that if your mother's father was bald or had severe hair loss, that meant you, if you were a male, would also have that problem. Now, is that true?
Well, there seems to be a tendency for the maternal side to have more of a role in androgenetic or male pattern or hereditary hair loss. However, it's multifactorial, multi-genetic. It's not just the mother's side, but the father's side also plays a role. But potentially the mother's side plays more of a role.
So you can't just look at your grandpa on your mom's side and say,
correct.
Oh, he has a lot of hair, so I'm home free.
Right.
How about in your family? What kind of relatives?
Well, my grandfather, he was kind of bald, actually.
Who was?
My grandfather.
On
my mother's side.
Mom's side?
Yeah.
Okay, so that fits the stereotype.
And on my father's side, I really don't know, actually. My father told me that he was kind of going up here, on the sides up here. But otherwise, on my mother's side, it's like mostly all over. So
besides heredity, which is a factor, what are some of the other causes, OJ?
Hereditary is the most common cause of hair loss. There are lots of other processes that can cause hair loss. There's actual skin disease of the scalp that can cause hair loss. There's something called alopecia areata where you get patches of baldness, and when indeed you do pull hairs from the scalp, you get 6, sometimes more hair at one time. There are other diseases, systemic diseases like lupus or syphilis that can cause hair loss. Generally, though, when you look at the scalp, you can see that there's something abnormal going on in the scalp. There are other processes and internal mechanisms that are going on that are more subtle, and you may not recognize those as a cause unless you actually investigate, ask a lot of questions. Those can include causes like anemia, thyroid problems, that sort of thing.
So it's a symptom. You shouldn't just say, oh, it's in the genes.
Right, correct.
And if it was anemia or another condition such as that, then if you treat the cause, in a sense, you will have the hair regrow?
Correct.
Okay. What age do young men start losing their hair on average if they're going to have male pattern baldness?
Well, you can lose or gradually thin hair almost starting in age 20, but a lot of times by age 30, you have an idea how much hair a person is going to lose. You gradually get a certain amount of loss after that.
No matter what? I mean, is that just inevitable?
It's not inevitable because there are plenty of people that don't have a significant hair loss. Most people, men and women, have a certain amount of recession of the frontal hairline. 96% of men in their 20s and 80% of women have a slight regression of their frontal hairline, and that's not necessarily an indicator of the hereditary type of hair loss. It may just go back a certain ways and they may not lose any more hair. So a lot of people will lose hair, but not necessarily be an indication of anything that's going to progress further.